Okay, so let's start off with this typical startup story. Right? I had to have cats. This is my first presentation with cats in it. I'm very excited. Build your product first, right? That's the Minnesota way. You want investment money? Sure, build the product first. All right, we get excited. Let's get it done. Let's make this thing. We can do it. Dude, we're going to be rich. This is awesome. We got somebody who's going to invest in this if we just build it first. And then you get this about a couple of months in. Why isn't everybody else working as hard as I am? You get that sense of feeling saying, you guys, I thought we were in this together. Startups begin with enthusiasm and teamwork, but many implode because the team falls apart. Nothing destroys a team like the argument over who isn't pulling their weight. This is the Concur team. We have 7 equity partners in Concur. These are the 7 developers and 1 graphic designer, 6 developers, 1 graphic designer, who worked on Concur before our first release. Anybody who worked on Concur in our startup phase, before our first release, got equity. Anybody who's worked on Concur after we started generating revenue either got paid cash or they got a debt note, which we turned around and actually paid them all of our notes off in January. 7-person founder team. That's pretty insane, right? I mean, it's hard, especially if you didn't raise funds. I mean, if you raise funds, you can pay people a paycheck. You have as big a team as you want. When we're talking about a bootstrap company, 7 people, we sat down when we started Concur and we said, hey, you know, how are we going to do this? Who gets what for equity? There's no way. I mean, you'd never figure this out in a 7-person team, I think. At least you might guess, but you probably would guess really wrong, which is why we came up with the model for Concur. What's really interesting about this is that in 2.5 years, we've not had one argument about anybody pulling their weight. That's astounding. I mean, I have never talked to a startup, a bootstrap startup, who didn't have that discussion about, look, I gave you 20% of this company, or we agreed that you would have 20% of this company. I'm working 80 hours a week. You haven't done anything this month, right? And that's a really hard thing to do with partners in a company. And then on the backside of it, well, dude, it's been 6 months. We were supposed to raise by now. I can't keep doing this. I needed to break. You know, there's all these reasons why you do or you don't work, and they're very reasonable reasons. Very few times is it because someone's lazy. That happens. I mean, it definitely happens. Or, you know what? Yeah, my job was to do sales. We still don't have a product. What am I supposed to do? Right? There's these things that come up when you are in a startup that's just really hard to manage in a team when you're talking about equity. So here's what we did. We earn your equity model, the Concur equity model. This is a model that I invented. Well, I didn't say, let's say that wrong. I didn't use anybody else's model as a template. I kind of came up with this on my own, and maybe other people have done it. But the people that I've talked to about our equity model have really liked it and said, you really need to tell more people about that. So I thought, hey, MinneBar, let's do that. Before you do this kind of Concur equity model, you have to agree with this statement. Ideas are worth nothing. Execution is the only thing that creates value in your company. I can give you this except for the cat pictures because I don't own them. I just grabbed them off the internet. So yeah, if you tweet me or send me an email, I've got business cards here. I can send you this afterwards. The slide deck I'll send you. So if you don't believe this statement, then this probably isn't going to work for you. I think a lot of entrepreneurs say, I've got the best idea in the world. Well, here, okay. How many people are nerds in the room? Software developed nerds? Okay, so not nerds. Okay? Generally, you hear this from the not nerds is, I've got the world's greatest idea. I just need some nerds to build it for me. Those are the people that think that ideas are worth a lot of money. And I'm telling you that they're not. That's why you almost never get funding on a business plan anymore. You really have to have a prototype or a beta. And I'm not saying you're wrong, because that's fine. That's who you are, and there's no right way to start a startup. But this model probably isn't going to work for you if you say, well, I have to have 70% of this company because it was my idea. This is probably not going to work. This is the model that's not going to work for you. Nobody got up and walked out. Okay. So in Concur, everyone earns their equity 1 hour at a time. Everybody tracks their hours. Now, that's a scary thing. People hate time cards, right? But in Concur, we'd all been consultants. We all knew how to track our time. Let's track our time. You have to buy into the reason why you're tracking your time. Is a big part of it. And we only tracked productive time. So how many people have spent time on the internet saying, hey, I'm trying to figure something out, and I'm just going to surf the web for a couple hours tonight and see what I can find? Generally, we don't record that time. That's not really what we would call productive time. We might spend all day on Twitter looking for potential investment targets. We would always sit down and say, you know, if I was billing a client, would I actually bill them for this time? And if the answer was no, if you were actually getting real dollars for it, then you shouldn't record it for equity. Everyone else sees everyone else's contribution. Time card systems are public, and so whether that's an Excel sheet that goes out at the end of the month or a public time tracking software, we use Toggle for a really long time, T-O-G-G-L, toggle.com. It's not free, but it was a good piece of software. You would see what everybody else is doing. It de-incentivized people to try to stretch the truth. In fact, I would say that in our team, people were probably recording less time than they actually worked because they just forgot to enter their time for the last 3 days. And like, I don't know, let's just say 10. I know I was up until 2 o'clock, but I don't know what I worked, so let's just call it 10 hours. And each hour that you track has a quantity of units to be earned. And we always want to make sure that we set it up so that if a partner just, something's not going on here, we can reject their ability to earn more equity. What that means is that you can basically boot somebody out of the company by shutting down their ability to earn, but they don't lose the equity they've already earned. That's a really tough thing too today, right? If you start a company and you dole out all that equity up front, saying 20% here, 10% there, 30% here, 40% there, and then somebody doesn't work out, what do? Right? You got like a give back, ask please, could you maybe give back all but maybe 2% of that equity because that's really all your time was worth. Well, that's a comfortable conversation. In the model that we've got here, this ability says, hey, you know what? You did what we asked you to do. It's just not working out. You're not contributing as much. We don't believe the time that you're entering. You fill the code full of bad bugs. It's just not a good fit, right? And then you exit. But it's like, you know what? Hopefully we'll make this thing a go, and you'll get your investment of your time back. But we need to have the ability to shut people's off ability to earn additional equity. But it's not just about, oh, so go ahead.
With that, is the total population of like units earned growing?
No, we'll get to that. We'll get into some of the details in the member control agreement. But here's like fundamentals, right? So we're getting to the concept. But here's the other problem is we need money too. So in a bootstrap company, you're probably going to do consulting, right? You're going to be working your product and you're going to do some outside consulting. And so you need money too. So the way that you would do this is you'd say, hey, the partners are going to agree on a market rate for each partner's hourly rate for consulting. So whatever you could make in the open market, that's kind of what your time is worth, right? Don't tell me that your time is worth $200 an hour because you're super smart if no one's actually willing to pay you $200 an hour to be smart for them. And so you have to evaluate what are people's time, is it really worth in your company? And you come to an agreement. The team comes to an agreement. Now in Conquer it was easy. We were all kind of senior level guys, and so we just set it to one number across the board. But if we would have had somebody who was a junior, an intern, college student who, you know, this person's going to be our social media strategy, we believe in him or her, we think that this is a good fit for the company, but there's no way we can value that person's time at $75 an hour or even $50 an hour because they're 19. What are we going to do? We just have to, what could we get for this person in the open market? That's what their time is worth for us. Because honestly, if you have to give a 19-year-old kid $50 an hour worth of equity, maybe you should just go hire a 19-year-old kid for $12 an hour and they'll be super happy and you won't be giving up more equity than they're worth. Every partner can bill consulting to outside clients, but through the company. And the reason why you want to do this is you want to have whatever billing they do to come back into the company first, so it's pre-tax, right? Because then you can spend that money and not have to pay taxes on it before you have to spend it. So if you're doing consulting to bootstrap your company, do it through the company so the money comes back into the company first, and then you only pay taxes on what you don't spend or what you take out. And by doing this, then you have equal incentive to put hours towards building product in the company or making money for the company to spend on an attorney or something else. This was one of the things that we really struggled with initially with Conquer is that we had said, okay, everybody's hours is worth this X amount of dollars. But then the problem became, well, somebody's got to go out and bill something. I mean, we've got these legal bills, we've got hosting costs, we've got all these things we need to spend money on. Somebody's got to go out and bill. but you don't make money for billing. You don't earn equity for billing. Well, that sucks. I'm not going to bill. You guys bill, right? I'm gonna earn equity because this company's going to be worth $10 million next month, right? And so you have to make sure that you have equal incentive. It doesn't matter if I'm billing to make money for Concur or I'm working on Concur. An hour for Concur is good, and it doesn't matter where I put it. So that's why it's important to have that your time is worth what you could get for it in the open market if you're going to use a model like this and you're going to try to bootstrap your company. But here's the final problem. I like to eat. So if I'm out billing and I'm billing 20 hours a week, but my friend in the company is heads down 100% on Concur, I can take out the piece of the dollars that I made from consulting and say, hey, you know, I made 10 grand this month. I'm going to take 5 to pay my mortgage, and the other 5 stays in Concur. And then my friend says, well, dude, I kicked butt on Concur, but I need to buy groceries, so can I have some of that money too? Well, that's kind of weird, because now what? I mean, does that mean that I don't get the equity from the dollars that went into the company, because it really didn't go into the company, it went into your bank account so you could buy groceries? And what about all that equity you just earned? You know, you should really get all that money because you took money out. And so what we settled on was this formula where an hour worked, consulting dollar billed, and a consulting dollar out all had an equal conversion point. So here's an example. And there's like a 4-page example that I run through. And hopefully by the time this example is done, it'll kind of pull all together in how we've done things. Each ownership unit in Concur was worth 50 cents. So I need to make sure I address the member control agreement, but I think that's at the end. Part number 1 in this fictitious example, not representative of Concur, can bill an average of $100 an hour. And so for that person, 1 hour equals 200 membership units equals $100 cash. Partner 2 is 75 an hour, so 1 hour, 150 units, $75 an hour. And partner 3, 1 hour, 100 units, and $40 an hour. So in this particular month, partner 1 works 200 hours of productive time, and I put the productive there, internally on projects. But they need $2 grand to pay their rent and groceries. So the mathematics work out that you take 200 hours, $100 an hour with your time, 50 units. This is how many units you earn through your involvement in the company. But then you had to take out $2 grand to pay your mortgage, and so you deduct the number of units for the amount that you took out, and that's how many units that you earned. And I'm gonna put quotes around earned in that particular month. So does this math make sense to people? It kind of in and outs. Now the next person is only the $75 an hour guy, worked 100 hours internally and 150 hours externally. So they only earned 1,500 units for actually working on the product, but they earned 2,700 units because they brought in consulting income. And the important thing here is we valued that person's time at $75 an hour because that's what we agreed is kind of fair market. But they went out and found a sweet gig for 90 bucks an hour. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because this is real dollars. This is real money that came into the company, and that's valuable to Concur. And so they're going to earn, and in this case, it's actually better for this person to go bill externally. For as long as that contract will run, just go bill. Go bill, make money for Concur, and because you're going to earn units faster. But the other thing is that when you need billing and you get a crappy contract for maybe 40 bucks an hour, you have to really decide, do I go to my mom's house every night for supper so that I can eat, so I can get more value by working for Concur, or do I suck it up and then take that $40 an hour contract even though the time's not equal? And here's the last example, the junior on the team, 200 hours, but this person needs a paycheck. I really just don't have any savings. I really need to pull things through. So they put 200 hours in, which earned them 1,600 units at their 40 bucks an hour. They need $6,000 a month to pay their, take their girlfriend out or whatever else. And so they only earn 4,000 units in that particular month, but they got a regular paycheck. So here's the summary. Partner 1, the big billing guy, 34,000 units. Partner 2, the medium billing guy, 4,200 units, and partner 3, 4,000 units. But here's the awesome stuff. Everybody got the money they needed to survive. Partner 2 is married, wife works, makes good money, doesn't need to take any money out. 500 hours of productive development went into working on the product, and the company added $5,000 to the bank account, the money that partner 2 brought in that wasn't spent. There's nothing, every single one of those is a positive thing. The junior guy added value to the company. I mean, here's a way to hire somebody without actually having to hire somebody and giving them equity in the company to do that. Somebody would say, you know what, I just can't do this because I have to have at least enough money to cover my mortgage. But I've never been able to find a contract at $100 an hour that I could work 10 hours a week at. So the people that can get flexibility have the flexibility to bring the money in that can be brought in through consulting. The people that have to work full-time and take out a big chunk, it works for them. And the people that work heads down full-time and take out a little bit just to cover the bills, it works for them. This is the formula, this is the model that we used within Conquer to make Conquer work for 2.5 years. We had 3 people in Conquer that worked full-time for a year and then went part-time. What would that have been like if we would have established an equity model expecting everyone to work full-time, and then for the last year they haven't worked full-time? In fact, one of them hasn't hardly worked at all because he just couldn't. That's a really tough conversation that we never had to have. And it's the only, in my opinion, it's the #1 reason why we are where we are. Now here we get to the legal considerations of doing a model like this. Depending on who your attorney is, they might say absolutely not. Nope, this is too much funny business. And that's fine, because this is a really complicated model to work with, and you have to have the belief of your attorney that you can make it work. You also have to have the trust of your partners. I mean, you shouldn't be in business with people you don't trust anyway, but you really have to believe that the model is going to work for you before you would put it to work. It's not a magic formula. It just makes good partners work together better. The member control agreement is very long and complicated. It is really hard to kind of get through. You really have to, like I said, you have to believe in the model and put the time and energy into building the member control agreement the right way for you. So the question about, do the units grow? So what we did is all the units were issued up front for millions of units. Everybody got issued all their units up front. But all the units were unvested. So they had no voting rights. They had no voting rights is basically what the unvested means there. And the partners do not earn new units each month. They vest. So when I said back there that number one earned 34,000 units, they didn't really earn them. They just got those units vested. And the units are vested based on their contribution. So that's cash into the company minus cash out of the company plus hours into the company. And so what that does is you are doing this because a couple of reasons, mostly for tax purposes. All the units are right up front. So you've identified your team, the 4 of us, or the 3 of us, or the 5 of us, we're going to make this thing awesome. And so right then and there, that's your founding team. And so you issue out your units, and your company's worth nothing because you have nothing. You have an idea, and ideas are worth nothing. So there's really not a tax implication to issuing initial units because it's your initial units, and that's just kind of the way it works. Now, if you were adding units as time went on, your company becomes more and more valuable the farther along you get, and now that's salary, right? Whether units have a value associated with them, you've earned the units, and therefore you should be paying income tax on it. Well, you didn't get paid any money, so how are you going to pay your tax? That's why you want to do all your units up front. And then they just vest over time. And so I think the next slide talks about the vesting. So the voting in the company is based on the units vested. For taxes, liquidation, and dividends, only the vested units are considered for payout. So you have to do this in an LLC. Did I have that back on the first slide? This only works in an LLC. S Corp has real stock. You can't do this funny business of figuring out how to pay people on a flexible thing in an S Corp. It has to be in an LLC, which is why I keep saying units and members instead of stocks and stockholders. The company always has to have the option to buy back the unvested units, because if you get acquired or you get an investor, let's say an investor comes along and says, hey, Conquer, $2 million, here you go. Awesome. We won't be an LLC. We'll be forced to convert into a C Corp. Hey, cool. The company buys back all the unvested units. Now the units that are outstanding identify the ownership of the company. And so that translates into what the stock would be for the new C Corp that just got created at the time of a big investment. Or same thing with an acquisition. If your company gets bought, no problem. Company buys back all the unvested units. Now the units that are outstanding identify the ownership within the company, and then we move forward with the reorganization into a C Corp or folding into the acquiring company, and however we get paid out that way. Always, and again, where I said that you need to be able to stop somebody from vesting their units, you buy them all back. There's nothing left for them to vest because all their units have been bought back. All your official you always use official documents. Everything has to be signed by the president, CEO. Send out monthly and quarterly statements of saying, here's where the equity is, this is where the vesting is for this quarter based on earn up. Have a way for each other to dispute your claims. So if somebody says, wait a minute, you're missing this, cool. I'm bad accountant. I missed that in Excel. Let's get this into the formula. Let's get that in there. Or, dude, there is no way you spent 500 hours this month making that checkout thing. That's ridiculous. That's not right. You need to have those checks and balances within the founding team so that you reduce, I mean, we've gamified our equity model. We reduce the amount of somebody trying to game the system, right? And so, again, you have to trust your partners. You shouldn't be in business with them if you don't. But by making everything public within the founding team, you honestly reduce the amount of having honest errors from being in there. But you have to do it every month and every quarter because it's so hard to come back after a mistake's been made and say, wait a minute, back last year in 2012 in January, those weren't my right numbers. Okay, well, they've already been signed off on. We sent them out. You said, nope, no changes, signed off by the CEO, done, frozen. Of course, you know, we're friends, so we can make things fixed if we do find a problem. But the idea is that if there is a problem, you need to get an attorney involved. Look, it's been signed off. Everybody, I have the email back saying that you approved it. It was signed off, and it's set in stone. So as much as we're trying to be loosey-goosey and we're trying to be friends about this whole thing, you still always have to do the right things legally to protect yourself.
So, quick question: did you add any equity partners to the founding team?
No, not after release.
Did you consider it at all, though? Did you have someone
I have a slide on that about people coming on after, but we can talk about that. There's something else I was going to say here on this before I move forward, and now I've forgotten it. It'll come up. So why is this a gamified model? This just sounds like, I mean, this doesn't sound gamified, right? Gamified is like fun, right? Gamification incentivizes people to do the things that they want. Well, this is why it's gamified. And we didn't realize this when I started this model. I did this model because I wanted to eliminate the arguments that cause every startup that has imploded to implode. Arguments among the founding team. Somebody's got to go. I wanted to eliminate that from the start. But this really kind of opened my eyes. Thursday night, it's 10 o'clock, I'm not tired. Normally I go play Xbox for a couple hours, but damn it, I know that Andy's working, and he's going to get ahead of me in the equity, darn it, and I am not going to let him get ahead in the equity. I'm going to go work. And this model incentivizes everybody to work hard. It pulled the product ahead because everyone was terrified of getting left behind. Nobody wanted to be the weak link, and now we're keeping score effectively. But even so, I mean, we all believe in Conquer. We want Conquer to be successful. We want a biggest piece of the pie as we can get, but we want to earn it honestly. And so it changed my motivation. I mean, I would work late instead of watching a movie or something. I would say, watch a TV show with my wife or something. She'd go to bed, and I'd go back to work for a couple hours. It really does accelerate the product development within the right team. And if you've got the right team, then this may do that for you. So here's some of the things that you'll run into without a gamified model. And I'm sure you've probably all heard this. Why should I work so hard when this person is clearly not working on the weekends? They're taking their time off. I know that we agreed to be equal partners, but that was 6 months ago. We never raised funding. I can't maintain this pace. I'm dying here. I got to cut back. Well, that's not fair, right? How many times have you heard that's not fair? I need to get a job. I just reached the end, my limits of what I can do financially in a bootstrap company. I need to go get a job, but I'm not giving you back my equity. This was not supposed to take this long, right? How many times? This is not supposed to take this long. I've put in the contribution I was supposed to put in, but now I have to go get a job. I'm not giving back any of my equity, so you can go try to find somebody to fill my shoes. And then, everybody's afraid to take a vacation. In Conquer, we're very fortunate. Every member of, we have redundancies, and in fact, I probably have that in here. So when should you think about using this model? Teams of partners who really believe in equality, and that goes back to the idea isn't worth anything. Huge credit to my partner, Justin Peck. When we started this whole thing, I said, no, Justin, this was your idea. He said, no, we're all equals. I don't want to have anything extra just because I came up with the idea. I really want this to be a team effort. I really want this to work. Without a leader like that, we would have never been able to do this model from the beginning. This is a model that will work for long-haul bootstraps. If you think you're going to raise money in 3 months, don't bother with this. You just track time, do a debt-to-equity thing, give out equity at 10, 20% here and there. If you think you're going to be a long-haul bootstrap, this might work for you. If you're an existing company or you've already got a product, don't try to shoehorn this in. Come up with something else that you can use to gamify your business or incentivize people to go ahead. Startups with variable workforces. I don't know if that was your question, but I just want people to contribute and I want to get value out of it. Even though this kind of sounds like a funny little way of keeping track of stuff, it's still real partnership. And so if you're looking for just grabbing as many part-time nerds as you can here and there, and I'll get you guys something when I'm done, figure out a different way to do that. Don't bring that into your legal organizational documents. This really is for a starting team. And you really should try to find partners who can consult. If you've got somebody on your team that just has nothing they can contribute in the consulting world, I think that's kind of a stretch to say you have nothing that you could get an hourly on. But find people that actually maybe have consulting experience or are willing to say, you know what, I could go out and do an hourly here or there with bookworking or advertising or sales or whatever the case may be. Consulting is kind of core to this, where anybody, it doesn't matter what you do, whether you work outside a company and bring cash in or you work on the product internally, you contribute to the company. And so consulting is kind of a core to how this works. And you have to have people that will track their time. If people just refuse to track time and they say, oh yeah, it was 20 hours a week, that's probably not going to work. We did that when this first started. We said, well, as we were working on our model and trying to get that to work out, we said, well, what did you put in 3 months ago and last month and this quarter? And we'd all say, yeah, it was probably about half time, or it's probably about quarter time. And we said, okay, yeah, that's fair. And then we started actually tracking our time. Boy, we were not putting in as much time as we thought we were. I mean, we all think we work our butts off. When you actually sit down and think about it and say, well, I had to go get groceries, and I had to pick the kid up, and I had to go do this, and oh yeah, I took my wife out. It's like, man, where did the day go? I know I work 14 hours, but according to my fingers here, I only work 6. And so you really have to track your time because you'll always overestimate on what you contributed. I guess I already talked about this a little bit. If you're an established startup, find a different way to gamify, incentivize. I keep using the word gamify, but it's really talking about how to incentivize people to help you. Debt to equity is a great way to do that. If we had a partner who had come on late, in fact, we talked to a few people about this. We track their time, just like we track the time with the partners, and we created a note. We actually never finalized the paperwork, because we never had to use it. But we created a vehicle where we could track people's time, we valued their time, and we just kept that as a completely separate vehicle. And then when it would have come time to do a conversion, or we would have made X number of revenue a year, the conversion principle said, hey, you convert at this time at this value. And it really would have been similar to the fact that they had been there from the start. But we didn't go back and redo all of our organizational papers. We didn't issue new units, which now would have had a value, which would have had a tax implication. And so you didn't want to do that. Oh, by the way, back to taxes. You want to try to do this early, because you're issued the units and you were awarded the units on the day that the membership control agreement goes into effect. If you liquidate those units within a year, you pay short-term capital gains tax. After that, you pay long-term capital gains tax, which is another reason why you don't want to be issuing units, because all those units you were issued for the previous 12 months are taxed at I think it's twice as much as short-term or long-term is half what short-term is. And so you want to get all those units in your name as quickly as possible so that you can get into a long-term capital gains tax bracket. Again, this is not a good model for temporary workers. Use a different vehicle like a convertible note. This is really not a replacement for payment or debt. If you're trying to go out there and shop your way around for some consultant saying, oh yeah, we'll get you some equity, boy, that creates a mess. Oh, I know what I was going to say, the thing that I said I forgot. So it's about investors. Investors don't like creative equity situations, right? I need something to be simple. I need it to be clean. I don't want to mess around with this. This is crazy. This hurts our ability to raise funding. Now, it just does. Now, if I can get an investor's interest enough for them to let me sit down and say, here's what this model did for us. They say, oh yeah, I've had so many startups just implode because the team fell apart. You guys have solved that problem. They'll buy into the model. It's very well documented. Huge member control agreement. Thing is big because it's all laid out. The rules are right there. It's well defined. We have an amazing spreadsheet that at any given point in time, an investor will say, what's your equity breakup look like? Well, this month, that's not the right way to answer that. That gets investors scared. You can say, just I have about 40%, and I have this and that, and this person have about 20%, and I don't know, I'll probably end up adding up to 150% equity if I keep going. But you just say, well, this is what the equity breakdown looks like today. And if things move along, then you can say, well, this is how our equity model works. If you tell a good enough story and you tell the problem, I mean, how many times has investors said, what's the problem you're trying to solve? This is it. I mean, right? This member control agreement is, what is the problem you're trying to solve? What causes most startups to fall apart? We've solved that problem. You can have that discussion, but don't do it right away. So some other miscellaneous things that you, I should mention, I guess I already mentioned this top one, is that once you get an equity event, or whether that's funds coming in from an investor or you get acquired, you freeze acquisition. So that also means that you may not want to take investment now at a small amount. Don't take a $10,000 investment because you kind of just screwed up all your model. Take it on a convertible note or something like that. If somebody says, I'll give you 50 grand, but I'm not doing convertible, I want equity, well, you have to decide if you want to convert then and freeze your equity or not, because an investor, an angel probably isn't going to come along for the ride and watch their percentage keep getting chunked down by everybody else working hours. You might find an angel who says, yeah, I want to be part of the team, here's some cash, and I get in, and then I'm going to do your sales, or I'll do your PR or something. There's some things you can do. You're going to have to redo your organizational state or member control agreement, so it's probably better to do it as a completely separate vehicle. And again, this external investment is convertible note. If you're going to put cash in yourself, do it as a convertible. Don't try to shoehorn this in to the units you have already gained in your pool and all that stuff. Do it as an external convertible at the end. I'm sure you guys have probably figured it out right now. This is very complicated, and it doesn't fit every situation. But if you're a team, a big team, and you're trying to do a company, and you say, you know what, we don't need to raise money. There's 6 of us. We can do this. And maybe it's a small thing. You say, hey, we should be profitable in 3 months. If you're doing a medical device company, don't do this, right? But if you're doing a web startup that shouldn't take very long to get this thing up and running, hey, we can make some money. This is not a business that will ever raise money. But we still have to have some legal agreement here in terms of who's going to do what and how you're going to get rewarded for it. This might be a model that works for you. So here's the danger. Anything that can be gamified will be gamed. That's where you really have to come, know your partners. By the way, I have 5 minutes. Is that all I have? What do I got left here? 5 minutes. I have 5 minutes. Okay. So the next question I have for you is, I'm an entrepreneur. Would you guys pay for this? I mean, I've had people say, hey, you should quit Conquer and start selling this thing. If I templated my member control agreement and the spreadsheet that has all of our equity stuff, is this something that you think could save you 10 hours of law time with an attorney?
Well, how much did you spend in legal fees for this?
I'm not going to say, but it was thousands and more. Kevin. Kevin's an amazing attorney. You should talk to Kevin. He put up with my craziness on this, and you really have to have the right team. Lawyers can do creative things with documents as long as you have the right team to fit it. Oh no, did I lose my I think I lost my battery. Well, that was kind of in the slide deck anyway. So I don't know. I've been thinking about rolling up the member control agreement, and the legal time was not the. I've got dozens, perhaps even 100 hours into just building it out because it's my invention, and I just had Kevin make it legal. I tell you, I know that I spent over 40 to 50 hours just making the Excel file and doing all the formulas to match up time to save us month after month after month the pain of doing these things. So I don't know. If you're interested in it, I'm trying to decide if I want to invest more money into trying to make this something else that other people could leverage. I don't want to give it away because I've invested a lot into it, but if you're interested, send me an email. So let me bring up the Q&As. We only have 3 minutes here. Let's see if there's any questions in here. In your experience, are productive hours the most effective metric for earning units? Have you considered less subjective metrics? I think I should probably simplify this as saying if you bill somebody else for the time you just did, then it counts. If you'd say, you know what, honestly, I just can't justify billing somebody $100 for this. I've had a lot of clients where there's a problem and it was my fault, and I'd spend 6 hours combing through the internet for an obscure error message and say, oh, Jesus, I can't believe I did that. I'm only going to bill you an hour, right? Because I fixed the problem, but it took me 6 hours to solve it. In good conscience, I can't bill that time. That's kind of my rule of thumb for productive hours in Concur. If I wouldn't bill a client for it, I'm not going to record it for Concur. Okay, other questions? Yep.
I guess, do you have a way for people, like if they're not able to put enough time, can they put cash into it and buy units?
Externally?
Well, no,
Through consulting?
Internally.
No,
So
but
if
when
you just want to like put in $10,000 because you need more money.
do it as an external vehicle. Do it convertible note or something like that. I mean, it has to fit with whether you use this model or some other model for organizing your business. Find what works for your company, and then talk to your attorney about what's the right way to bring this in. But you really have to be careful about mixing up ownership and a control agreement in an LLC when you have these variable things, because it's already kind of a mess, and you really have to try to keep it as clean as you can. Yeah. Sure. If the team agreed that, you know what, if somebody goes and finds Bill Gates to come invest in Concur, you know what, that's more than the hour it took you to have that phone call. The team can award, I mean, you can have the team award units, sure. I mean, again, your friends, your colleagues, you're working together. What's good for the company is good for everybody.
Do you change the value of a person, that internal number that you?
You could. We haven't. You could. I mean, that's, again, you can modify the member control agreement by a majority vote. Sometimes it depends on how you write it. Sometimes it has to be unanimous. But the board just gets together and votes and changes it, right? And so you can change that, and you can change anything in your membership control agreement. As an LLC, you just have to have the board vote on it. Yes? Well, the total valuation, well, your company is whatever an investor is willing to pay you for whatever percent. When you evaluate your company, it's really about what somebody's willing to pay for it. You can say that you're a $5 million company, but until somebody gives you $1 million to own 20% of your company, it's just whatever you say it is. We divvied out enough units that we didn't think we'd run out, is really what it comes down to. We thought we'd either get to profitability where people would be making a paycheck, or we'd have an investor before we ran out of units. And then we kind of like multiplied by 2 because everything takes longer than you think it will.
If you're going to set somebody up in one of these notes and then have them convert, did you use the 50 cents then? Was the idea you would let them convert at 50 cents, or did you?
The conversion thing is only when you need to pay your bills, your groceries, your mortgage. At some point when we have enough money.
I'm talking about outside founders. You bring in you consider bringing in somebody else
Mm-hmm.
who's going to have equity upside. You're going to set them up on a note.
That would be the benchmark I'd try to use, but in the end, it's whatever somebody's willing to give you for whatever percentage of the company they want. You may pay a premium saying, you know what, this guy's going to get a 30% bump because just having his name attached to our company is worth it. It doesn't matter if you've got this model that we've got or you've got some other model. When you talk about bringing in external investment, it's what can they bring to the company and how does that change the value that we have. So there's no right answer. I would obviously try to benchmark it based off of, well, we've got 7,000 hours into this company. That translates into, what is that, 3.5 million of value time. An investor will never think that your time is worth anything. So you have to try to figure out, you know, what you think you can, how you match it up. But I mean, you don't want to discount your time either. I mean, 7,000 hours of development, I think we're actually, it might be at 9,000 man hours right now. You know, your time is not cheap. It doesn't matter what your equity model is. You don't want to discount yourself.
It kind of changes the valuation argument completely.
Well, it probably just tracks it better, right? Because if you're a nerd and a bunch of nerds and you work 2 years on a product and somebody asks you $1 million for half the company, it might sound awesome until, but if you're not tracking your time, you might say, wait a minute, that's a terrible deal. I mean, that's me working a $30,000 salary in a team this large. I didn't do this for the last year for 30 grand a year. So you have to figure out what it's worth to you.
No, and most startups can't make the argument, invested capital argument for this rate phase because they have no idea.
Yeah, valuation's tough. I mean, this has no bearing really. I mean, you have to decide what's right for you guys and your company. So my Twitter handle is Scott K. Davis, and so speaking of gamification, all the speakers like to kind of keep track of who's the best. So tweet out, hey, the awesome session by Scott K. Davis, so that we can gamify MinneBar for the speakers. Send me an email. I have cards up here. Tweet me. We'll get in contact, and I will take the cats out and then email it. And if you're interested in the equity model, I'm still trying to decide what I want to do with that. I'm not opposed to sharing my legal documents and my Excel sheet, but I'm not going to give it away. So if you're serious about it, maybe we can help each other out. I can save you 20 hours of legal time, and you can help me recoup my cost. So, all right, thank you very much.